When the house phone rang, Annabelle was startled and immediately looked over to the phone. This is the phone call she'd been waiting for hours. She noticed that her hands were shaking uncontrollably when reaching out to grab the phone. She wanted to know, she really did, but she has never been more afraid of anything in her life. She slowly moved the phone up to her ear. "Hi, this is Annabelle?" A voice answers back, and then within seconds, tears welled up in her eyes and everything in front of her turns black. Annabelle and her husband Gerald were wedded in their early 20s and have been married for 10 years or so. By all accounts, they seem to have a pretty normal marriage and a normal life. The main difference between the two was that Gerald was highly introverted, whereas Annabelle was more of a free spirit and always lived in the moment. This gets her a lot of attention in most circles and makes her quite popular with everyone. Even though Annabelle was playful, she was always loyal to her husband. But that all changed during a festive office Christmas party. There was a man named Jack that worked at the same real estate firm as Annabelle, but they never actually spoke to each other before. But one Christmas party, they somehow got to know each other, as apparently he was just as much of a free spirit as she was, and was always a center of attention. They instantly clicked at that party and talked all night long about everything and nothing. They soon began talking more in the office and meeting up for workmate lunches. It was still pretty innocent until they exchanged numbers. And as they started texting each other, the conversation started getting flirty. Annabelle was so conflicted, but she had strong morals. So it was at the point in time she let him know that she was happily married and didn't want to go further with his relationship. Jack, being a confident man who can't take no for an answer, was even more inspired to try harder and become the man she couldn't resist. The more time they spent together at work, slowly he began to break down the walls she built around her. She got herself into an emotional affair, and she didn't even realize it. When he gave her a surprise kiss at one of their workmate lunches, she knew he had her, and she couldn't come back from it. The affair turned physical pretty quickly and seemed to be going full speed ahead as they continued their office romance. Meanwhile, things at home began to unravel. Her husband started noticing a change in his wife's behavior, as she seemed to be getting colder and colder and wouldn't be as intimate as she used to. Even their conversations were becoming short and stagnant, as she always seemed irritated for some reason. He started getting suspicious when he noticed purchases of lingerie that she had never shown him, as well as other questionable transactions. He was confused and just had to confront her. He tried to ask what was going on and if their marriage was in trouble, but somehow she convinced him everything was fine and the purchases were for a relative she was helping. Gerald didn't have a reason not to believe her, because she was always faithful to him for the past 10 years. So he took her at her word and left it as is. At this point, all she could think about was Jack and how much more they had in common than with her husband. Soon after, Jack announced that he was leaving the company to move across the country and wanted her to go with him. At first, she refused. This couldn't be the way she leaves her loving husband. But as history has shown, he had a way of convincing her. In the end, she left her husband and moved to start a new life with her new lover. Gerald was completely devastated by this betrayal. Annabelle's mother and sister begged her to go home to her husband. They kept telling her that he is a rare find amongst men, a loving and dedicated husband who will do anything for her, and this road she's on will only lead to tragedy. But unfortunately, When you're rolling high on emotions, you never see the wisdom in good advice, and you always choose to go against it. Of course, not long after she moved in with him, Jack's behavior towards her started to change. He wasn't as passionate about her as before, and was even looking at her as if she was a bother. One day, she gets home early from her job hunt, and she found him in bed with a prostitute. She was enraged by this sight, but his response to this rage was indifference. Instead of shock or fear, he didn't even seem to care. It was like he wanted to get caught. When she asked why he did it, he said, "Because you were suffocating me. I can't even imagine what it was like for Gerald since you were with him for such a long time. How could he handle someone like you for so long? I would never know." Humiliated, ashamed, and jobless, she moved back to her mother's place. Gerald, as the good guy that he is, tried to convince her to go counseling together, as they had invested 10 years into this relationship and built a life together. But Annabelle was at rock bottom. She felt such guilt and shame for throwing away such a good marriage for a mere cheap thrill, and couldn't bear the thought of how much she had hurt him. So she refused. Some time went by, and she started getting sick. For more than a month, she had a persistent cough, so she decided to go to the doctor. To her surprise, he confirmed that she had caught tuberculosis and advised her to go for an HIV test. Hours passed, and the suspense was unbearable. The fear was already so overwhelming, but to add the anger she felt towards herself was practically unbearable. Though she prayed for it to not be true, she felt like she would have deserved it after what she did to him, like it was her punishment. After a while, she got a phone call, and the news she received completely shattered her. The test came back positive. From this point on, she was drowning in depression, and this sped up the rate of infection quickly to full-blown AIDS. Not long after that, she was soon hospitalized, and Gerald, her husband, generously paid for a private room for her and an all-round-the-clock nursing service. He even visits her to wash her hair and her feet. When he was there, she could never look him in the eyes as her shame was just too overwhelming. She felt so bad that she even felt the need to skip her medication to attain her untimely death faster. The nurse asks her why she stopped taking her medication, and she told her the reason was she wants to die faster, because she believes it is the only way to free her husband of a wicked woman like her. She told her that she knows for a fact that he won't touch another as long as she is still breathing. So her death would be her gift to him, which would allow him to find a woman more worthy than herself, one who would make him her world as he would hers. One day, her mother and sister arrived at the hospital to find her husband drying her hair. He had brought her scented soap and her favorite shampoo, which would normally lift her spirit, but she had such a far-away look in her eyes coupled with her bone-like weight loss. It was like looking at a moving corpse. It took Annabelle a good minute or so to recognize their presence in the room, and she greeted them with a small, sad smile. They exchanged greetings with her husband as he thought to excuse himself in order to give his wife privacy with her family. Her sisters suddenly rushed after him to speak about something. They were just outside of the private room and probably assumed they couldn't hear them. But that day, Annabelle and her mother learned how quiet hospital wards can be, because sound seemed to travel more effortlessly there than anywhere else. Her sister wanted to know how he was doing, so she asked him how he was coping, and if he needed anything that he never had to hesitate to ask. Then, she asked him a burning question that she wanted to ask for a while. Why are you not angry?" At that point, her mother tried to distract Annabelle to prevent her from hearing what was coming next. But she weakly raised her thin arm and told her mother she wanted to hear his answer. His answer was, "I wish I knew. I know I should hate her, and my anger would be justified, but watching her suffer makes me want to take her pain away. I just want to hold her and let her know it's going to be okay." During this exchange, the mother couldn't help but stare at Annabelle. She noticed tears running down her sunken cheeks as she listened to the conversation and muttered to herself, "I'm such a fool. I'm such a fool." She turned around and looked at the table where 2 wedding photos were lying, as well as 3 envelopes. She pointed at them and said that these are letters she wrote for them. One was for her mother and sister. The other was for her husband. But the last was to go to the woman who will marry her husband after she was gone. Her mother was taken aback by the last statement, but she assured her that she didn't want to cause any more misery, which should be hers alone. But this was her way of contributing and possibly protecting her husband's future happiness. She also told her mother that not a day goes by that she wishes she didn't go back to that office party, that she should have stayed home that night and shared a cup of tea with her husband, just like he wanted. People always say that the grass is greener on the other side, but sometimes it's a hard lesson to learn that it doesn't matter how green the grass you imagine it to be. You should be grateful and feel blessed for all the wonderful things that you have in your own life. If you let go of what you have and try to keep searching for greener pastures, you may instead just find rotten soil and pests. This is an example of just that. A story of a woman who followed that belief and suffered the consequences leading to her untimely death. This video is sponsored by Let's Get Checked, a professional STD testing kit that you can do from the comfort of your own home. It is easily accessible and ensures that no individual ever puts off an STD test due to an awkwardness or uneasiness about visiting a clinic or healthcare professional. How does Let's Get Checked work? Choose your test online and it will be delivered to you in a discreet packaging. Activate your test and return your sample to our provider. Once your sample arrives in the laboratory, confidential results will be available from your secure online account within 2 to 5 days. When your results are available, they will be reviewed by a physician, and a nurse will then contact you for a consultation over the phone. In some cases, the physician will be able to provide prescriptions to the pharmacy of your choosing. If that's something you're interested in, you can get 20% off with the coupon code MINUTE20 using the link in the description. Don't put off your health. Let's get checked today.